Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Hurley. I'm joined tonight by Gaelic Games Fan TV host Aaron Prendergast to discuss this weekend's Gaelic Games action. Obviously, there's a lot of games in the hurling, a lot of games in the football, and we might discuss the Camogie and LGFA later on as well. There's provincial championships going on in those competitions as well. Just before we get into the podcast, shout out to our sponsors at Capture Athletics. If you want to rescue your own, check them out if you haven't already. So yeah, Aaron, we're to the second weekend now of, well, the third if you're counting the Christy Ring, Nicky Rackard and Laurie Marr in the hurling. And then the football, we're well into it now with the provincial championships. This last weekend before the provincial finals are all known, and we know exactly who's going to be in Samagor, who's in the Talton. It's kind of different this year because, like, out of both competitions, we know 16 out of the 17 teams in the Talton and 15 out of the 16 in Samagor. The only game to decide that is Louth and Kildare this Sunday, so it should be an interesting game in that kind of onus. But how you been anyway?
Yeah, no, keep it well, Matthew. Cheers for having me on the channel again. No, some cracking games this weekend, as you said, like both the provincial semi-finals. I think are going to be very, very interesting games, especially with Meath, Dublin, and it being in Portlaoise and outside Croke Park. I think it definitely makes it more of a fascinating encounter. You have Armagh, Tyrone, like that game obviously speaks for itself. And yeah, in the hurling as well, especially after week one, or week one of the All Ireland kind of Liam McCarthy teams. Like what a cracking weekend that was, and really looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Exactly. So, and we'll start off with the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. There are some stories of the week in Gaelic Games, but there are kind of connected to the games. So once we get to the games, we'll probably discuss the controversies and things like that. But we'll start off with the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. And with this game, Cork against Tipperary in the stadium behind us here in the Super Value Park Keefe on Sunday at 4 p.m. It's live on RT2 as well. Obviously, Cork and Tip both opening with a draw. Cork drawing against Clare after being 12 points up at half-time. Frustrating from a Cork point of view not to get the win there. For Tipperary, a good draw against Limerick. And as well as that, there were some developments on the Sam O'Farrell and Darragh McCarthy thing with the Tip Under-20s. They ended up not playing for the Tip Under-20s during the week. So they're all ready to go for the senior. And I think that's generally for Tipperary, from their point of view, I think that's the right decision from them. Darragh McCarthy and Sam O'Farrell are going to be ready and rare to go for this game. So it should be an interesting one to see, in more so how Tip will perform in this, because in the league final they were beaten quite comprehensively out the gate by 10 points. I have a feeling, Aaron, this will be closer to the league final though.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think especially after Tipperary's draw with Limerick, like I think they proved to everyone that they're not going to be whipping boys or anything of that nature. They're going to be very competitive probably in all the games that they play. You'd imagine they'll pick up a win somewhere along the way, maybe even 2 wins. And yeah, they're they were brilliant against Limerick. As you were saying, you've had the young guns and Darragh McCarthy obviously coming through, but you've got John McGrath still flying the flag in a full forward. Like, how outstanding was he obviously the last day? Jake Morris, like these guys, you've got some brilliant hurlers in Tipperary. And yeah, as I was saying to you yesterday, like at the end of the day, they're coming into this game without the pressure, without the expectancy. It's all on Cork. Cork are the side that everyone's expecting to deliver. It was a bit of a reality check maybe at times in the second half, albeit they did go down to 14 men. But even at that, probably a bit of ill discipline at times, maybe falling for some of Clare's tricks, as we were kind of saying previously as well. And it was a learning curve, and I think they have to come out and win this game, because if Cork don't win this game, then all of a sudden it's a throwback to last year again, where after 2 games they've no wins. And I know they got over last year, but other results helped them along the way, let's not forget. So I think for Cork, they want to be in charge of their own destiny, and they've more than enough players and enough talent to win this game. And as we were saying as well, like goals, Cork are so deadly off getting goals, whether it be a Brian Hayes. Obviously, they won't have Shane Barrett, which is going to be a big loss. But Brian Hayes, such a brilliant goal getter in those scenarios. Dara Fitzgibbon as well. So you would expect Cork to have enough and goals to be the difference. But you wouldn't be entirely surprised if Tip did put in a big performance here.
You mentioned Shane Barrett being out for this game. Rob Downey, I don't know what the situation is. Coincidentally, the Cork team will be announced at 10 p.m. this evening. So after this podcast goes out, all going well. So like you don't know whether Rob Downey will play. Obviously, we're speculating at the moment. Shane Barrett definitely won't play because I don't think the CCC have been called into it, and Cork haven't put in an appeal as far as I know. So I don't think he's playing. And then you look at other players there as well with kind of injury problems and things like that. I don't think they're anywhere near. I don't know what's the story with Bjorn Mullins. Is he going to be fit for this game? He was injured previously. If he is fit, will he play at the 5 position and Kieran Joyce go in at number 6? It's going to be very interesting to see from a Cork point of view. Then, like if Bjorn Mullins isn't fit, Tim O'Mahony, does he go to number 5? And then does Darragh Fitzgibbon drop back to midfield? Do you put Declan Dalton back in the team? If you keep Darragh Fitzgibbon in the team, who do you pick in the forwards? Do you pick Decky Dalton? Do you pick someone like a Brian Roach, a very dependable player for Bright Rovers? Do you pick a Dermot Healy, obviously a raw player, very good, skillful player, obviously, but he only made his championship debut last week against Clare. And to be honest, Clare really made the most out of their form in many ways in Ennis. So it's going to be interesting to see this evening what way Cork line out. I know obviously there could be late changes before throwing, but all the same, it should be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it will be interesting to see who kind of gets the nod. As you said, like Cork haven't been short of talent or depth in terms of players in that option. Like, it'd be interesting to see like Shane Kingston. Like, I know he's like form probably not been there. Like, would you think maybe he might play, or what you reckon?
I think he's more of an impact sub, to be honest with you. I think we probably need to keep him in reserve. I've seen a lot of cries for Dermot Healy, but then again, I see like Dermot Healy. I'm not saying for 1 second he's a bad hurler. I think he's an exceptional hurler, very good for Remo Kelly, very good for Les Gould as well, and very good for Cork under-20s in the past few years, and scored a lot of scores in the league as well along the way for Cork to win that. But against Clare, when he came onto the pitch, it was almost like Clare had an easy target. They were going to go for this guy. He made his championship debut, and it was just a bit too much for him. Is this game going to be too much for Tipperary? A full house in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, it might be a bit too much for him. I think, honestly, the person to pick as a straight-up replacement for Shane Barrett is a pretty obvious one, but I think it has to be. I think it has to be Decky Dalton. He scored the last minute free to get the draw against Clare. I know it was an easy free, but he has shown in previous years that he does do well under the pressure. But after Decky Dalton, generally, I do agree with you. I think Shane Kingston might be an option, but if you're only picking one in terms of replacement, I think it has to be Decky.
Yeah, I think so probably as well. Yeah, like especially on form, saying that as well. Like, yeah, like it's been an interesting one with Shane Kingston. Like, it feels like coming off the bench, as you said, he's just one of them players that always makes a difference coming off the bench. He always makes an impact. Whereas starting games, I can't think of too many games recently where he has been, brilliant right from the get-go. So, I think Declan Dalton probably a fair show. As you said, Dermot Healy, would be a great option as well. But maybe just not quite ready just yet. And it could be a bit of a gamble, especially in a game that you really do need to win as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you look over Tipperary, like you were talking about Cork and team selection and saying there's a lot of pressure on them. Is there pressure on this Tipperary team when you look at it? I know Darragh McCarthy and Sam O'Farrell obviously didn't play in the under-20s. It actually worked out well for Tipperary in the end because they beat Waterford and they were in a very good position to reach the final in that Munster competition. But in a way, are Tipperary not under any pressure here? I know they had a very good performance against Limerick, but considering not much support is going to go there for Tipperary, a few tickets have gone back into the system from a Tipperary point of view as well, suggesting that there will be way more Cork support at Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday as well. There's not much pressure on Tip, is there, or am I just hallucinating a small bit?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem that way anyway. Like, they're probably, especially when you look at Tipperary as a county and the history and what they've done. Obviously Clare won the All-Ireland last year, but before Limerick's dominance, Tipperary have All-Ireland winners in their team. Do you know what I mean? At senior level, whereas Cork don't. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the bizarre kind of way of looking at it. But I think it's just the way it's gone the last couple of years for Tipperary. It feels like there should be more pressure under them, especially with it being, I think it's Liam Cahill's third year now. With Tipperary, so you really, if they don't get out of Munster, you'd probably say that's probably him gone. But I think it's just the fact it's in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, the fact you guys have looked so good as well. Like, I think this is a game that Tipperary can lose. Whereas I think for Tip, they will be looking towards Waterford, I think, and Clare as the games that they can get points. In saying that, look, in the Munster Championship, you give it all in all 4 matches, because at the end of the day, you don't know where your points are going to come from. And I certainly don't think this will be a whitewash from Cork by any stretch of the imagination. But I think for Tipperary, there doesn't seem to be, I don't think there's as much expectancy to win this game. But look, I think that could suit them, because at the end of the day, playing without pressure can suit you. And especially for these young lads as well, for Liam Cahill, you saw that a bit against Limerick as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it develops.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd be very interested to see if Tipperary actually bring a fight to this game as well, especially with a load of Cork support there as well. If Tipperary are ahead of half-time, what's the atmosphere going to be like in the stadium? But obviously that's all for Sunday. You think Cork will get over the line, but obviously probably a less margin than 10 points, which it was in the league final.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it won't be super comfortable for Cork. I think Tipperary will certainly have their moments in it. I think goals will ultimately just be the difference. And I could see Cork probably winning by probably 6 points in the end, I think, is the margin I'll go for.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4 points. I think Tip will really put a show on us, possibly level at half-time maybe, and Cork will power on the second half with them. Funnily enough, I actually think, I see your point that Tipperary having more All-Ireland winners, but to an extent, I think actually Cork have more experienced players, and that might push them over the line in this one. So I'm going to go for Cork by 4 points. Looking at the other Munster Championship game at 2 p.m. on Sunday, it is Waterford against Clare in Walsh Park on RT2. Is this a dangerous game for Clare in many ways? Waterford, obviously, it's their first game of the Munster Championship. Not much is expected out of them. But if we thought Tipperary under no pressure, Waterford are certainly under no pressure going into this one. And again, like the Cork kind of situation with the team selection, it'll be very interesting with Waterford tonight or tomorrow, whether they select Austin Gleeson in the team, will Ty de Borca stay in the team in the back line. So this is a very interesting game. A lot of people will say a slam dunk Clare win, but Waterford could easily cause a lot of problems here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it's not a foregone conclusion. Look, Clare, especially how they ended the game against Cork, you would expect them to carry that momentum going into this game. That fighting spirit that they showed, I think they showed that they're definitely, as All-Ireland champions, and maybe people expecting there to be a bit of a hangover and everything else. But at the same time, look, they turned up in the second half versus Cork. Albeit, look, yeah, they were playing with an extra man, but they were absolutely brilliant. They played the type of hurling that won them the All-Ireland the season previous. And yeah, you would expect them to win this game, but Waterford at home in Walsh Park, like, it's such a tough place to go. Waterford gave Clare a really, really good run for their money last season, and certainly probably should have got a draw at least. As you said, with Austin Gleeson back on the side, it's definitely given kind of a new build, a new kind of air of confidence with Waterford supporters. And I fancy them to do it, to be honest with you. I think just at home in Walsh Park, which is such a tough place to go, I think for Clare, I do expect there to be a bit of inconsistency within the team at different stages. Look, as good as Clare were in the second half, they were, very caught adrift by Cork, and Cork maybe should have even been further ahead. So I fancy Waterford to do it. I think they'll just have a little bit more. I think there was with Clare, yes, Tony Kelly obviously kind of stepped up a bit more in the second half. David Reedy as well. Peter Duggan obviously getting a big goal. But I fancy Waterford to just have more than enough. And I think with Ty de Borca in there, Desi Hutchinson, I think they have more than enough talents to get over the line.
A lot of the Ballygunner lads doing well for Waterford this year as well. Obviously, you mentioned Desi there, Patrick Fitzgerald as well, is a very good player. Like, I've seen him firsthand, obviously, for being the backroom team for Stars, and he was probably the one player for Ballygunner. We were just saying, if you put anybody on him, he's still going to do damage. So I would expect him to have a good game if he does play this weekend as well. So Peter Quealy's first championship game as Waterford manager should be interesting in that kind of element as well. Is there an element too, though? I'm saying Waterford as well to win this game, just for spoilers there. But is there an element there to suggest that Clare will repeat the dose, what they did last weekend, when it's getting tough, when the fans are on top of them in a way, they start to bite back by using kind of underhand tactics, by dragging people, by dragging people off the ball and things like that, which isn't nice to see in the game. But at the same time, it's great game management in a way, because it gives Clare a bit of momentum, it gives them a bit of a lift. If things start to go wrong, maybe at half time for Clare, would you expect that kind of element to seep in as well?
I think they've proven through fighting back more often than not, like in big games. Like, I mean, they did so obviously versus Cork in the game last week, in the final last year, different stages. They were down, they were behind, and they were looking like they were going to struggle early on. You remember against Kilkenny in the All Ireland semi final when they were nowhere to be seen in that first half, and in the second half they stood up. So it is something to kind of factor in. Like, this Clare team, like, they never seem dead. They fought back so many times that they don't panic. And it was one thing I saw with them against Cork, that although they went quite a good bit behind, they never really panicked. And even after the red card, like, Cork had a period where they were able to manage the lead and kind of get it to 8 or 9 points. But they seem to use a lot of experience. And I think that is the thing about this Clare team now, having won an All-Ireland last year, having players who've been around the block. Some of them have obviously won 2 All-Irelands. They've some young players in there, but they've a lot of players who've been around for a good while now. And I think they know the little tweaks, the little differences that can, drag them over the line, can turn things around. And to be fair to Brian Lohan, I think he's proven himself as a very, very good coach, a very, very good manager as well. The little tweaks he'll make it mid-game, I think, always tend to make a difference. And yeah, I think for Clare, I just fancy Waterford overall to have enough, but it is one of them. Like, I couldn't really see a scenario where Waterford go 7, 8, 9 points in front and then Clare come back. I think it will be a game that'll be fairly even throughout, and Waterford might just nick it towards the end. But Clare definitely have the players and the capability and even the bench to maybe turn it around.
Maybe so. It should be very interesting to see that kind of element as well. But yeah, I would back Waterford to win this game as well, tightly so, obviously. And worth noting as well, Waterford didn't lose a game in the Munster Championship in Walsh Park last season. So that is factoring into both for predictions as well. So Waterford, it's a tough place to go, and I feel like Clare will get the ambush like what Cork got last year from this Waterford team. They aren't going to be dead buried, and I think Waterford might just nick it this weekend. Moving on to the Leinster Championship and moving on to Armagh County Dublin, they face Wexford in Parnell Park this Saturday at 4:30. That's live on GA+. Dublin have an excellent record against Wexford. I struggle to think when was the last time Wexford actually beat Dublin. I actually can't really remember. They haven't beaten them certainly this decade anyway in the Championship. So they have a good record against them. It's in Parnell Park. It seems like Dublin are going on a better trajectory at the moment than Wexford are at the moment. When you look at all levels, like at club level, Navina winning the All-Ireland club title, Wexford clubs nowhere to be seen in recent, even though to be fair, St. Martin, St. Martin, should I say, did very, very well in the club championship from a Wexford point of view. But you look at Wexford as an inter-county team, Lee Chin and Rory O'Connor, who else is going to do their scoring? For Dublin, you have a lot of players coming through the ranks like AJ Murphy, Ronan Hayes, Donald Burke, Colin Curry, Sean Curry. It's endless, really, from a Dublin point of view. You would expect Dublin to win, would you, in this game, or think Wexford could cause a shock?
I think it's always been close with Wexford. Like, they're a difficult team to play against. Although we've beaten them, I think 2018 maybe might, but I can't remember the 2019. I know we got out of Leinster in the end in 2019. I think 2019 might have been a draw, as far as I remember, but I think maybe it was 2018 the last time they beat us in the Championship. I think they've definitely beaten us in the league since then, but I think 2018 might be the last time in the Championship, as far as I can remember. Anyway, so we do have a great record against them, albeit it's, there's been draws in there, there's been late points, there's been late goals as well, as we seen last year. It's kind of been weird. There have been times in the last couple of years where we haven't played well against Wexford, but we've done enough to get over the line. I think overall, in terms of attacking players, we definitely have more from the likes of Donald Burke, our own Brian Hayes as well, who's very good. And of course, you've obviously got Ronan Hayes, who can come off the bench and make a difference. AJ Murphy's been a player a lot of us Dublin fans have been calling for over the last couple of seasons, and he's finally kind of been given more and more of a chance. Sean Curry as well. I think with Wexford, it is one of them where you kind of know, like, they've had more or less the same sharpshooters over the last couple of years, from Rory O'Connor to Lee Chin. I think Lee Chin is so deadly. Like, I think he is the best hurler. He will be the best hurler on the pitch, in my opinion. He is the player that can do the most damage. I think that will be a big thing, obviously, for management to try and get a good man marker on him to kind of keep him quiet. I think if we can keep him down to 10, 11 points, then I think we'll win the game, to be honest with you. And I think we do have more than enough attacking players to come through it with Parnell Park as well. it is just one of them as well with Dublin, where it's, you know, it's probably similar for both teams. Like both teams probably aren't progressing, but we're probably not regressing either. We're probably both at the same level. So it's one of them that it could go either way, but I would back us to narrowly come through it. But again, it is one of them that if we're at our best, we could probably win more comfortable.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see it nonetheless, obviously. But just out of Dublin panel, I seen obviously there was a post on Instagram or Twitter about the Dublin panel. I noticed there were 7 Navina players on it. Obviously, Neil O'Callaghan has come in as manager as well. That winning mentality that the club got, I wonder, could that be a good thing for Dublin hurling, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was something as well over the last couple of years under Micheál Donoghue and even Matty Kenny as well. The Nafina lads weren't really getting a shot. They weren't really coming into the side. The likes of Sean Curry wasn't really playing. AJ Murphy as well. So look, it made perfect sense. I mean, look, after the success in the year that we obviously had with Nafina last year, and obviously going into this year with the All Ireland Club Hurling Championship. It only makes sense for those lads to be given a chance, and they are players that are used to playing together. Sometimes it can, when you favour too much of one club, it can, you can be taken away from other clubs, and this harmony can kind of develop. But it doesn't seem to be happening from a Dublin perspective. And I think the win versus Offaly, the way we came back, will give us confidence as well. Because had we have lost that game, you'd be very worried going into this one. But I do think we'll have enough.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Dublin could win this by about 4, maybe 5 points in this one. I just think Wexford are way too over-reliant on Lee Chin, and it probably will show at the weekend from a Wexford point of view. Moving on to the next Leinster Championship game, and it's on Saturday as well, Offaly against Galway in Glenisco Connor Park in Tullamore at 6 p.m. on Saturday, live, not anywhere, and that's the first story in week in the Gaelic Games, I guess. First of all, this game not even being shown live, and even more comedically in its own right, you have Tyrone and Armagh, which we'll talk about in just a sec, at 4:45 on GA+. You've Wexford and Dublin at 4:30 on GA+. This is the only evening time game, and it's not even being shown. And you look at the context behind it as well. Offaly are going into this one thinking they could cause a real shock in Tullamore. Galway are going into it with the greater confidence after getting a slaughtering off Kilkenny last week by 12 points. Generally, Aaron, I think it's an easy question to ask, and probably an easy one to answer. Well, it's a hard one to answer, obviously, because we're so puzzled. Why is it not being shown?
I don't know. We seem to have these conversations every year. Like, it's even the scheduling as well. Like, it's like, you have 2 games on Saturday in terms of senior level that we can watch. In terms of Armagh, Tyrone, and Dublin. Wexford, obviously both being shown on GA+. Both games are right beside each other as well. So it's, you have to double screen it if you want to see both games. But you think maybe it would be like a double header or something like that, or they could kind of space them out a little bit more, which is the first thing that's a little bit disappointing. And yeah, like the fact that it's an evening game kind of sitting there by itself is a little bit bizarre. But we saw that over the last couple of weeks where, like, there is a time slot available to actually show the game, but it doesn't get shown. And yeah, I don't really know what it is. Like, I don't know if it's a case of GA Plus, like, having a certain, they're only allowed to show a certain amount of games or something of that nature. So they obviously have to pick and choose their games quite carefully. But yeah, I think it's just bizarre, really. Like, it's, you've so little promotion for a lot of these games. And it seems like a lot of the big games aren't being shown. And yeah, it's just another massive own goal from the GA. They made the same mistake with Meath Offaly in football, like not showing that game, what a big match that would be. And I don't know what it is like with Offaly. Like, they're not being shown anywhere, I think, across all their Leinster Hurling Championship games, as Liam was saying yesterday. In football, they've barely been shown as well, despite having a very successful year in Division 3. So yeah, very disappointing, I think, for both Offaly and Galway. And, I think if there is a surprise or a shock here and we get to see none of it, in many ways, it's a slap in the face for the GA, and ultimately they deserve it.
That's the thing. And to be fair, the GA got it when they didn't show Cork and Donegal last year. Remember that in the football? And there ended up being a shock with the Cork footballers. And we were all thinking, why on earth was this not shown? And we could easily, going swiftly onto the game, a nice segue onto the game, we could easily get a shock like this weekend, and the J will get, as you described there, the slap in the face earlier in the championship than expected.
100%, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it's one of them things. There absolutely could be a shock here, given how well Offaly played versus Dublin, but how poor Galway were as well. Like, Galway were terrible in the game versus Kilkenny, barely in the match at all. Playing the same kind of boring tactics that they were playing under Henry Shefflin, just lumping the ball up to Conor Whelan and hoping for the best. But I think, as we saw, if you put a great man marker on him and kind of scoop up the loose ball, and that's Galway half beat, in my opinion, when you kind of cut off the supply chain to him. So absolutely, there's a chance here for Offaly. Like, there is obviously a good deal of young players there, and maybe Galway might have a bit more cuteness and experience, maybe kind of going down the home stretch to kind of dig it out. But with the likes of Brian Duignan, who's obviously in phenomenal form, Oisin Kelly, Dan Burke, Killian Sampson as well. We'll see what's happening with Adam Screeney. But you've got some top players there from an Offaly perspective, and absolutely they could cause a shocker.
Definitely so. And would you think Offaly could easily cause a shock here? Because like, this is a Galway team that were considered all-Ireland contenders as recently as maybe 2022 when they challenged Limerick all the way. Brian Kilcannon scoring that goal in front of the canal end in Croke Park, and we were thinking, okay, Galway could really cause a shock against Limerick. That was at the start of the Henry tenure. Now come to this, and there's a serious opportunity here Galway lose. And I think generally, Aaron, and I don't think this is an unpopular thing to say, if Galway lose this game, they're in serious trouble in not making it out of Leinster.
Absolutely, yeah. I think if they lose this game, they're gone, in my opinion. I think, to be honest with you, because like they still have to go to Parnell Park on the final day, which will be very tough. And like, beating Antrim, like, will they even beat Wexford? Like, you wouldn't be convinced, to be honest with you. They'll beat Antrim, all right, you'd imagine. But after that, you're thinking, not only could Galway finish outside Leinster, they could probably finish fifth. You know what I mean? Like, it's not inconceivable, to be honest with you, that it actually happens. So, you would expect there to be a response from Galway. There is a new management in Micheál Donoghue, look, who is, he's got great pedigree from what he done with Galway in the past. He took ourselves in Dublin to a Leinster final last year, and did do a good job, I think, overall, in terms of, and gave Cork a good run for their money in that qualifier game. But I'd probably go for a draw. I think Offaly absolutely can cause the surprise and the shock. But I think Galway's maybe cuteness and experience, especially with big players like, as we said, Conor Whelan and, Brian Kilcannon sort of playing in a full forward, maybe Joseph Cooney as well. But overall, I think it will finish as a draw.
You know what? I fancy Offaly to win this, especially at home as well. And you look at the only other home game they have in this Leinster campaign is against Antrim. So this is a major opportunity for Offaly to go ahead and get a win. We have a comment here from Gavin. Galway won't be relegated though, surely.
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. No, they won't lose to Antrim. Antrim will probably lose to everyone else, you'd imagine. So that'll be Antrim going down. And look, Galway, like they'll probably end the season probably with like 4 points, in my opinion. I'm gonna say they draw with Offaly, they draw with Wexford, and lose to Dublin. They finish with 4 points.
You know what? That's not a bad prediction, to be honest with you. I actually think they could beat Wexford, because I don't rate this Wexford team at all, really. They lose to Offaly this weekend, though. I think they'll probably lose to Dublin, especially if it's in Parnell Park. Like, I don't think Galway are going there and beating Dublin, obvious. But yeah, I think Offaly will win this game and provide the shock and the slap in the face to Gaelic Games in general. Look at this game when we talk about shocks there. Antrim and Kilkenny in Cork Park on Sunday at 2 p.m. No, I don't think, to put a long story short here, Aaron, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to shock this weekend. I think, honestly, Kilkenny could put out a B team, maybe rotate a few of the players and still win comfortably enough.
Absolutely, yeah. No, this should be a very commanding win for Kilkenny. Like, they're, aside from that Carlow game last year, they're the one team that doesn't do shocks in Leinster. They're the one team that, like, more often than not, I think if you were to go back and look at all Kilkenny's games against, Carlow, Laois, Westmeath, Offaly, these teams who've been, promoted or down near the bottom of the Leinster Championship since the round robin has come in, I think you'd see Kilkenny have won probably the majority with an average win of like 20 points or 15 points or something of that nature. Like even Dublin, you can kind of put into that bracket as well. Like they tend to give us a good hiding as well. So look, Antrim can take confidence from some of their performers against Wexford. But you would have to look towards a very comfortable win for the Cats.
Yeah, Kilkenny to win comfortably, in my opinion, as well. And that is the Leinster Championship wrapped up. Moving on to the Joe McDonagh Cup, the first game here, but it is the last game chronologically, but it is an interesting one all the same. Kerry against Carlow in Austinsack Park in Tralee at 2 p.m. on Sunday. It's also live on Clubber, so big up the Clubber guys there for showing this live game here. Albeit though, this Carlow team is on a different trajectory to the Kerry team. Very good result for Kerry last week against Kildare. But with, I don't know, is Shane Conway going to play in this one? Fiona McKessie's gone. Yes, they have some good new players in Tom Doyle and Oisin Mansell and a few of them players. Obviously, Luke Crowley as well. Some very good esteemed footballers that have transferred into hurling. But yeah, that's a good sign from a Kerry point of view. But Carlow, they've gone so well in Division 2B, or 1B, should I say. Like, coincidentally enough, out of the 1B finalists, Carlow didn't lose to any of them. They drew against Offaly and they beat Waterford, which is an incredible achievement in its own right. Martin Kavanagh's in brilliant form. Chris Nolan was the top scorer for play in Division 1B and also scored a hat-trick in the first game against Down, where Carlow scored 6 goals. Kerry are at home, but you'd expect Carlow to win this.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I think it was great for Kerry hurling to get a win versus Kildare as well. Like, I think Kerry have been one of them teams that over the last couple of years, you've been thinking, right, finally now there's going to be a drop-off after, getting to so many Joe McDonagh Cup finals, but they just keep pulling out wins, when you kind of least expect it, and beating Westmeath last year, getting a big win versus Kildare as well. But I think a win here would be too much, I think. You would think Carlow would be way too strong. Like, whether it will be as convincing as it was versus Down, I don't think so. But with Carlow's talent, like as you said, Chris Nolan scoring a hat-trick the last day, Marty Kavanagh, James Doyle, like they've got some tremendous hurlers in there, and yeah, you couldn't see anything other than a Carlow win, and probably will be 10 plus if we're honest.
Yeah, probably. So hopefully Kerry will put up a test, but I highly doubt this it's more so this Carlow team looks on a one-way ticket to the Joe McDonagh Cup final. Whether they'll win it, we'll have to see towards the end of the season. Another contender for this. We would have thought these two would have been contenders before, but considering Down conceded 6 goals against Carlow, I'm not so sure now. This game is obviously on in Down. I think it's on in either Ballycran or Park Esther. I think it's on in Ballycran, Down against Laois on Saturday at 1:30. I don't think it's live at Clubber either. I looked at Clubber on Twitter. It's not being shown anywhere. It could be live on Park TV, which is a Down kind of station, but I don't know in terms of that. But would you expect Laois to win this one or Down bite back? It's a hard one, obviously, for the Down players to bite back from, considering what happened last week to them to concede 6 goals the way they did. I know they were competitive enough in the first half, but that was a serious scoreline to concede in all honesty from a Down point of view. Will be a tough trip for Laois, who have some good players like Tomas Keys and Paddy Purcell, obviously. Will it be a tight game, do you think?
I think Down will respond. I think they will fight back. I still expect Laois to win the game overall, but I think for Down, having it been such a convincing defeat, obviously playing at home as well, which will make a factor as well. And I think as well, like it's, these 2 games against Carlow and Laois are going to define their season really, like in terms of if they can get promoted. And you lose to Carlow and Laois, you're 4 points adrift. You're obviously missing out on the head-to-head as well. Like, it probably is promotion out the door, and then maybe you're just thinking, right, let's just solidify and kind of keep ourselves in the division at a bare minimum. But yeah, no, I think Laois should be far too strong. I mean, Paddy Purcell still flying the flag there. Ben Conroy's looking very good as well. So yeah, no, I think Laois should be too strong. Don't think it'll be as convincing as what we were mentioning, Carlow versus Kerry. I think it'll be about 6 or 7, but I would expect Laois to win the game.
I would expect so as well. Just for clarity, the game is on Ballycran at the weekend. Hopefully Down will put up test and have some good players like Tom McGrattan and Pierce McCrickard, obviously. Paul Sheehan, I don't know, will he come off the bench in this game as well. Caelan Targart's a good player, Owen Sands, but I think Laois should have too much for Down, obviously, in this one. Laois are just at a higher pedestal at the moment than Down, unfortunately, for the Ulster side. Another side that were in the Division 2 final in the Alliance League, Kildare, they're facing Westmeath at home in St. Conleth's Park, Newbridge at 4:30. This game is live on Clubber for definite on Saturday. This is a difficult one to call. Obviously, Westmeath were beaten probably comprehensively out the door by Laois in many ways last week. Killian Doyle scored 111, including a fluke, free late on in the game. Kildare, disappointing defeat at home to Kerry. I know it was a good win for Kerry, but that was a disappointing defeat today for Kildare, considering they've reached the Division 2 final and pushed down all the way. We're thinking, okay, Kildare hurling could be on an upward trajectory here. They're going into Division 1B next season. They have to kind of beat sides like Kerry, who are Division 2 again next season. They didn't do so, and they were at home, which is very disappointing from their point of view. How do you see this one going? Because Westmeath obviously had a heavy defeat themselves last week too, so it's a difficult one to call.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it's one of them from a Westmeath perspective. Like, they haven't really kicked on the way we would have hoped over the last couple of years, especially since their relegation. And you're kind of are expecting a bit of a response and everything else from Westmeath, and we haven't quite been able to see that. But look, I think Killian Doyle's been brilliant. Like, he scored 111 the last day. And he's like, it is interesting with Westmeath. They're probably maybe stuck with the kind of same type of players. Could you see a shock here? I don't think so, to be honest with you. I think Westmeath will have enough to come through up by 4 or 5. But it will be interesting, because if Kildare can win this game, then all of a sudden I think Westmeath, like at one stage it was nearly looking like Westmeath might be in a bit of trouble for relegation last year. And it's not inconceivable if they lose this game that they do get relegated. So it's definitely a really important game, I think, for Westmeath.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a draw in this one. I think both sides are on kind of a low ebb at the moment. They could kind of cancel each other out in that kind of standpoint there, and I do think it'll be a draw on that Joe McDonagh game. So that's the Joe McDonagh Cup wrapped up. Just time to go through the lower tier competitions in hurling as well. The games are all along the bottom ticker of the screen on YouTube. So the Christy Ring Cup will start off with that. The games at the weekend: Tyrone against Donegal on Carrickmore on Saturday at 12:30. Also on Saturday, you have Wicklow against London at 1 p.m. in Antrim. And then Derry, 2 wins for 2. Obviously, Wicklow 2 wins for 2 as well. But Derry have been very, very impressive wins over Donegal, who did very well in the league, and a brilliant win in Ruislip against London last week. They were home to Meath in Celtic Park at 1 p.m. Kind of an interesting kind of triangle developing in its own right in the Christy Ring arm, because London beat Meath quite comprehensively on the first day out. I think that was about 4 or 5 goals they beat them that day. Then Derry beat London last week. Could we see a scenario where Meath beat Derry? If Meath beat Derry, it's going to be an almighty battle at the top of the Christy Ring Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think it makes it, like, obviously it's been nice seeing Meath kind of get their success and everything else in the Christy Ring, but you probably are hoping that it's not the same teams coming up and down every year. I think it would be nice to see either Derry or London kind of make a jump up to the Joe McDonagh. I think it would be great for, obviously Derry have been there kind of recently, and maybe it'd be lovely to kind of see London there, but you're just hoping other teams can step up as well. But look, I think Meath's quality has, we've saw, numerous times throughout the Christy Ring over the last couple of seasons. But as you said, like Derry, you've got some, kind of bright starlets there as well. So it's very evenly matched between all three, and I think that's what makes it, exciting.
Definitely. So I think it'd be very interesting to see if Meath do get the win at this weekend. I do think Derry will get over the line just about, and probably London will beat Wicklow. That'll mean actually London will be on 4 points, Wicklow will be on 4 points, Derry will be on 6. So Wicklow could even be in the conversation. We'll have to see towards the end of the Christy Ring Cup. The Nicky Racker, then Mayo are up against Louth and Hastings Insurance, McHale Park, Castlebar. That's on at 3 p.m. Fermanagh in Brewster Park in Enniskillen, they're up against Sligo at home at 3 p.m. on Saturday as well. And then on Sunday in the Nicky Racker Cup, we have Roscommon against Armagh at 12:30 in Dr. Hyde Park, King of Moffat, Dr. Hyde Park. You would have to say our Mayo were probably my favourites before the championship even began in the Nicky Racker. They won Division 3. They've now won 2 in a row in the Nicky Racker. They're home to Louth this weekend, who are punching above their weight in its own right as well, with the likes of Peter Fortune there and Darren Gagan doing some very well in the scoring stakes. He scored 64 points in the league. But Mayo, with the likes of Liam Lavin, Cormac Phillips, they do have some very good players in their team. 2 wins in a row in the Nicky Racker and won the league title as well. So you would have to imagine Mayo will continue their winning run this weekend in the Nicky Racker.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and like from looking at it, in the last couple of years, it kind of has been, Mayo, Donegal, those teams who've kind of been, kind of coming up and maybe going back down a year later. But yeah, like Mayo have far enough quality, I think, to get out of Nicky Rackard, and yeah, they will be tasting success in Croke Park in the Nicky Rackard this year, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. And just quickly on the Laurie Mark Cup on Saturday, all these games are on Saturday. Longford against Antrim in Glen Brothers Pierce Park at 12 o'clock. You have Monaghan against Warwickshire at 12:30 in Grattan Park in Eskeen, and then Cavan against Lancashire at 1 p.m. in Kingspan Breffni in Cavan. Look at this competition. I think Cavan, they were very unlucky to miss out in the final in the Laurie Mar last season. They do have some very good players, the likes of Nicholas Kenny and the likes of Canis Marr and all them players, and Liam O'Brien, who's the top scorer in Division 3 overall as well. Coincidentally, Liam O'Brien's actually from Waterford and Canis Marr is from Kilkenny, so Cavan do very well in kind of getting those kind of players in when they're working up in Ulster. But you would expect Cavan to continue their good form in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think so. Like my knowledge now, this kind of far down the chain probably wouldn't really be there. But I have seen Cavan kind of knocking on the door, and as you said, they've had a good league campaign, some very good hurlers in there. And yeah, you'd be looking at them probably as the front runners for Laurie Mar, definitely.
Definitely so. It should be a very interesting weekend of the Laurie Mar, no doubt about it. So that is the hurling wrapped up. We'll move on to the football in this weekend's games, and we'll start off with the big one. Armagh against Tyrone in St. Tierna's Park in Clonus in Monaghan at 4:45 live on GA Plus. What a game we have in store. I think in the last game, I think Armagh had a shooting accuracy of 81%, Tyrone at 75% in their respective Ulster quarterfinals against Antrim and Cavan. Both sides seem to be hitting form at the right time as well. If both sides play to their full potential, we talked about Cork and Kerry being probably one of the games of the decade last week. We could have another edition this week on Saturday.
Absolutely, yeah. Like this has blockbuster written all over it. I think you pay for your GA Plus subscription alone just to watch this game. In all honesty, like I think this is going to be absolute box office. And I think it's great, like for the rivalry about Armagh and Tyrone as well, because I was kind of mentioning to yourself yesterday and Liam as well, like we've saw both of these two teams win All Irelands in this decade, but they both haven't been at their best at the same time. I think Armagh weren't at the level just yet when Tyrone won it in 2021, and I think there has been a decline from Tyrone over the last couple of years. But from what we've seen so far this year, especially with Malachy O'Rourke coming in, Tyrone look up for it. They look absolutely up for it. So much talent all across the board, from McCurry to Dara Canavan, if he's going to be back, Con Kilpatrick around midfield as well. Who kind of looks back to his best, Brian Kennedy as well. So there's some quality players all across the board for Tyrone. And then you look at it for Armagh as well, who've got some absolutely outstanding players as well, even in the absence of Rian O'Neill. So it's going to be a very, very interesting game. Part of me feels like Tyrone have maybe got the better sharpshooters, the better players, maybe off 2-pointers, and the more kind of craftier forwards. But I think Armagh will have that physical edge, in my opinion. I still think winning that All Ireland last year will stand to them as well in terms of getting over the line more so now in these kind of closer games. And I think as well, like I think the Ulster Championship is there. This is what they want now. They won the All Ireland last year, and look, they'll take it again, even if they don't win an Ulster this year. If it does come around. But I fancy Armagh to just come through it. I think overall they might be a little bit stronger around the middle and defensively as well. I think defensively they're still the best team in the country, in my opinion. So I think that will be the difference. But you're talking about, it's so close. Like it's probably going to be a point either way. Extra time, and I hate to say it, Armagh, but possibly even penalties.
Maybe so, and we know Armagh's record on penalties doesn't need repeating on this podcast, obviously. But is there an argument that Dara Canavan is kind of the key in this one? I know Tyrone coped one all well in the game against Cavan. They looked very, very comfortable against. May I add, a very, very good Cavan side. To put into context, Cavan were close enough to Cork in Division 2. They finished ahead of Cork in Division 2. Cork really tested Kerry last week in the Munster. Then when you look at the flip side, Cavan against Tyrone looks, as Paul Flynn described in RTE, boringly good, which is probably the best. Would it be a good compliment for Tyrone fans? I'm not entirely sure, in all honesty. But Tyrone were that good. You have to admit, they were very, very good. They were very slick in that Ulster quarter-final. And I know they didn't score any 2-pointers in the game, but even with Darren McCurry in the team, with Rory Canavan, with Peter Hart, they looked well sharp. They looked well on form in this game. So is there an argument that Tyrone are back to their best? I know we talked about Armagh a lot, but is there an argument, even if Darren Canavan doesn't make it this weekend, are they back to their best?
Yeah, they're certainly looking back to, they're, as close to their best since the All-Ireland. They probably do still need a big win against a big team in a championship to kind of showcase that they are actually here. They've had some big wins in the league, but they have had some disappointing performances as well. I think they have ironed out the inconsistencies a lot more so this year. And it's kind of, you don't want to put them into the same bracket as the previous years, but like as you said, they were outstanding the last day, kind of gotten all their players kind of back into the team as well. Cathal McShane's obviously in there as well. So yeah, I think Tyrone certainly have the talent. I don't think it is an interesting one because you feel like maybe with Armagh and their Ulster drought and winning the All-Ireland last year, there's probably a little bit more pressure on them, which maybe suits Tyrone a little bit, because Tyrone sometimes are the team that always love to spoil the party and everything else. But yeah, I think Armagh just to do it, in my opinion. But as you said, I will be watching this game and look, when you're seeing the full-time result, you mightn't be as surprised as what you would be in other games if Tyrone win this. Yeah,
it's going to be a very interesting one to predict. I do kind of disagree. I do think Tyrone have what it takes to win this. If Darren Canavan does play, obviously it's annoying when you have the likes of Peter Canavan on the RT podcast. Obviously, brilliant pundit, not taking away, but he's not giving anything away about Dara. Nothing at all. It's so quiet now. It's very interesting to see if Dara does play. Obviously, it just out of interest looking at Instagram to see if there's any team selections for either team. There's none yet. And we're 9:30, so we're going to keep on guessing. But even with Armagh and Conor Turbitt, for that matter, but I'm going to go for Tyrone. I think they're watering along very, very well at this present moment in time. The relegation wasn't a relegation in its own right, if that makes sense. They finished on 7 points, the highest the relegated side has ever got. They're peaking at the right time. They're now 4 unbeaten, this Tyrone team as well. And even the game before their unbeaten run against Kerry, they probably should have won that as well in the league. I feel like this Tyrone team are really, really clicking into gear. I think Tyrone will beat the rivals this weekend, Armagh, in the Ulster semi-final, but it should be an absolute cracker. Look at the other Ulster semi-final, also on Clonus on Sunday at 3 p.m. on BBC Two Northern Ireland. It is Down against Donegal in the Ulster semi-final. Is it a bit disrespectful to Down to say that Donegal will slam dunk their way to win this one, or do you give Down any chance of overturning the tables?
Yeah, I know Down have made progress and everything else, and look, they gave a great game to Armagh last year, and they will be bang up for this as well. I expect them to put in a performance, no doubt about it. But I just think for Donegal, having come through Monaghan and Derry the way they did, playing some of the football that they did, from the likes of Michael Murphy, Paddy McBurty, Michael Langan, I think they will be too strong. Kieran Thompson was phenomenal in midfield the last day as well. Finbar Rorty looks like the next kind of top young player kind of coming through, and might even be a show for young footballer of the year this year. But yeah, no, I think Donegal overall should be far too strong for Down. What I would say is maybe with the fact that Donegal have had two, when Ulster would have came around, they would have said, look, we have to raise our game against Monaghan, have to raise our game against Derry. Could there be a slight drop, given that they're going to have a tough Ulster final either way in terms of who comes through, and then you have the group stages as well. So a part of me wouldn't be surprised if Down came closer in this game than people expected. It probably is the nature of how this year's championship has gone, but I do think overall Donegal will probably win, and I would say by about 7 points, I think would be the margin I'd go with.
Yeah, I'd probably go to Donegal to win this game as well. And you mentioned with this year in particular, the new rule has played a huge role in that, and the underdog really putting it up to the favourites. We seen with Leitrim against Mayo last weekend, for instance, there. But I heard actually off the ball during the week, and Vinnie Pert was actually on a discussion with Gaelic Games. Like, I think Gerard Gilroy was in the middle of the discussion, so was Tommy Rooney. And I think, the way off the ball, just have a random person beside you. This morning was Ciara Trant, the Dublin LGFA player. Earlier the week, happened to be Vinnie Pert, the former Dundalk soccer manager, who obviously talks about League of Ireland. But he was talking about the new rules, and he said that there is a obvious scenario where there's 11v11 in terms of attack and defence, because you can't keep three back and all that. And he did mention Jim McGuinness's name, because Jim McGuinness has a UEFA Pro license, obviously, in management with Celtic, and he managed over in American soccer as well, as far as I know. Do you think Jim McGuinness, and he did make a good point on this, Jim McGuinness will be far more experienced on the 11v11 than any other manager across the country? And he said that brilliant tacticians could have an upper hand on their counterparts when it comes to these new rules. Would you agree with Vinnie Pert there that Jim McGuinness has a major advantage over those managers, considering his UEFA licence?
Yeah, it's probably an interesting insight, and probably not one way that maybe we would have kind of looked at it. It's a hard one to kind of know. Like, I mean, it is a different sport. It is a different game. Like, maybe, like those kind of finer margins will make a bit of a difference. I do think it's testament to Jim McGuinness as well, though. Look, he earned the stripes by what he done with Donegal, the first time around. That kind of paved the way for him getting jobs. And look, obviously, he is a very good manager. He is a very good coach. He's obviously very good at interviewing and applying for these roles as well, because he's been able to get a lot of them that he has gone in to do. So I think he's kind of earned the stripes and everything else. But look, who's to say, a young Conor Laverty doesn't maybe look to kind of go down the same ropes, potentially. So like maybe that's something that he could potentially look at, and other coaches could look at. But no, like, I think it's been like, I think Jim McGuinness has more than earned his stripes when it came to that.
Definitely so. It was an interesting insight from a person from another sport in all that as well, and that could be very, very interesting in its own right when someone, let's say, from a different background like rugby or athletics or soccer even, join in the Gaelic Games conversation, have that insight. It is very interesting. I just wanted to mention that as well. Just before we leave the Ulster semi-finals, Gavin has a comment in here, and this is another story of the week in Gaelic Games as well that ties into the games at the weekend. If I was a Tyrone or Down manager, player or fan, I'd be highly insulted by the GA, presuming it would be Donegal and Armagh in the final in Croke Park. It could be used as motivation. In terms of Gavin's question, first of all, does he have a point? And second of all, what are your kind of opinions on if Armagh and Donegal reach the Ulster final, that game being on in Croke Park?
Yeah, like, I think it's a massive disrespect, I think, to Down and Tyrone, in my opinion. I think, again, like, I don't know why the GAA it's almost like they're putting their hats in the bag already and saying, it will be Donegal, Armagh in the final and everything else. I think for Down in particular, like, they are a huge county. They have a massive fan base. Like, when the Tailteann Cup final was on, they brought huge numbers, in my opinion. Like, I was at that game when they played, I wasn't at the one last year, but I was at the one when they played Meath, and they brought huge numbers to that. And I think if Down were to beat Donegal, like, I mean, that would be probably the biggest shock of the championship so far this year. And of course, there would be buy-in then, because Down will be thinking they could win their first Ulster title in donkey's years. You know what I mean? So, the idea that they shouldn't get the opportunity to be in Croke Park, and this idea that, look, they probably will bring smaller numbers than Donegal. I don't think there's no way getting away from that. And I think Tyrone would bring smaller numbers than Armagh. I think Armagh would definitely bring the biggest numbers, because they probably are the best support county in Ulster, and probably one of the best support counties in Ireland. But yeah, no, I think it's hugely disrespectful, I think, for both of those two, to not allow Down, to kind of just assume that it will be Donegal that will get there. And a bit of a kick in the face as well for those counties. But at the same time, like, that's it's good fuel to the fire, for managers. And you're kind of saying, look, nobody thinks you're going to get here, and they're already kind of saying, these lads are going to have a cozy day out in Croke Park. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it is extra motivation from a Tyrone point of view, especially I think because Tyrone, it's a 50-50 game against Armagh, and to suggest that Armagh will automatically reach the Ulster final. I know it's not meant in that way, kind of, but at the same time, Gavin makes a good point there. It is kind of a disrespect in its own right. We'll move on to the Leinster semi-finals now. Before we do, there is a comment just before we get into the Leinster semi-finals, there's a comment in here for Brian. It's totally disrespectful to Down at Tyrone. I've seen the Ulster finals in the 2000s in Croke Park and been 60 plus thousands. Yeah, exactly. So it should be a very interesting kind of element there. Brian does put in comments just to segue the Leinster semi-finals. Did you let anyone who are looking for Leinster let anyone know who's looking for Leinster football semi-final tickets? There's still tickets on sale, and he had it on here. They expect a combined total of 20,000 for both semi-finals, 12,000 for Portlaoise, and 8,000 for Tullamore. Obviously, the Portlaoise game is Meath against Dublin, and the Tullamore game is against for Offaly and Kildare. Before we get into those games, Aaron, to be fair, it's great that these games are on outside of Croke Park because I think you get more of an atmosphere. I don't think that's an unpopular opinion whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think it's, I haven't spoke to a Dublin fan yet who's like, oh, I'd love the game to be in Croke Park. We have to go up to Portlaoise. I think every Dublin fan I've spoke to is delighted. It's in Portlaoise. And like I'm, had this game been in Croke Park, I would have gone to it. Make no question about that. But would I have been as looking forward to it as I am now? Probably not. So I think the fact it's in Portlaoise, it does add a different element to it. Look, it probably makes it a harder game for Dublin because of the Portlaoise factor. But look, it will make it more entertaining. It makes it more of a day out for supporters and for fans. And I think it's, there's a lot of factors that point towards this game being certainly maybe the most competitive Leinster Championship game we've seen in a long time. The new rules, I think, definitely play a part for that. I think Meath have been very good in terms of 2-pointers. You've obviously had them do very well throughout the league, and they've been outstanding under Robbie Brennan. And they're coming in with confidence, having turned things around versus Offaly. So, and there is the fact as well that Dublin have, at times this year, looked sluggish. There have been some good performances in there, but there also have been some very poor performances. And there's no doubt there is an absence to some key players in there, with the likes of Fenton and McCarthy and Manny and McCaffrey. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. And without doubt, I definitely think this game could be quite competitive.
Brian adds a comment in here. I would welcome the game outside Croke Park. Absolutely. No problem. I think he actually means Ulster there, not Leinster, but probably both tying into each other in its own right. I'm actually going to start with Kildare and Louth in the semi-final. No offence, Aaron, obviously. Hope you don't take any offence there. Kildare and Louth in Tullamore at 2 p.m. live on GA Plus on Sunday. Generally because this has a lot riding on it. The winner goes into a Leinster final and the Sam Maguire Cup. The loser goes into the Tailteann Cup. In terms of those two kind of elements, this is a huge game for both sides.
100% it is, yeah. Like, I mean, it has the makings, and Kildare and Louth have played each other a good few times over the last couple of years. They're two teams very familiar with each other. Louth got the better of them last season quite comfortably. It's interesting. Like, I think Louth probably, like, I know Louth have a good kind of couple of under 20 players kind of coming through, but you probably do know what the ceiling is for this Louth team and for these group of players. And it's hard to see if they can do, if they can achieve more than what they done last year or kick on even further. As far as I know, I think Samuel Roy is going to be absent, so that's going to be a big miss. But I think for Kildare, like, they absolutely have the talent and the players there in terms of young players to kind of step up and make a difference. So I think it could be huge for Kildare in that kind of instance.
Definitely. So as soon as you said about Samuel Roy, I was onto Louth's Instagram page. No team announced yet. Just as a matter of interest, Aaron, where are you hearing that?
A good man never says. To be fair, it's actually more of an intuition, probably more than that now. It's just because he hasn't been around for the last couple of games. But it's, I mean, look, he could be there. It's one of them. We'll see on the day. I mean, if he is, look, I am going to back Louth to win the game, regardless. But I do think it's it's good. Let's just wait and see what happens on Sunday. What I would say is Kildare have the players to younger players that are kind of improving, younger players that are making the step up and everything else. And it feels like their potential seems a little bit higher at the moment in terms of you can see improvements. Like Louth were probably at their best last year. Kildare seemed like they were at their worst. And even at that, it was probably still a close enough game. So, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I would expect Louth to come through it, but I think Kildare definitely have a big chance here.
They possibly do, in fairness. And there is a comment in here, just as we go on to the next point. Brian is in here. While Dublin won by 16 points last year, don't expect it to be too much. I do expect Dublin to win still the golfing class. We'll discuss Dublin and me in just a sec. But for Kildare, you're Broccoli Louth, obviously, to win the game. Is there an argument from a Kildare point of view that the win against Westmeath will give these players the confidence that they haven't had in the last couple of years?
I think it will, yeah. I think Westmeath did have chances, though. Like, I remember watching that game, and Westmeath had opportunities to win that game. And I think for Kildare, like, let's not forget, they lost twice to Offaly. They lost to Clare as well. Like, when it has been tight games against teams who are at a similar level to them, they haven't always got over the line. Look, it was a big win versus Westmeath. They were playing in Newbridge, like, and I think that made a big kind of impact, obviously, to them playing in their own backyard as well. And I just think Louth, they do have a bit more. Look, even if Sam Mulroy isn't there, you have Tommy Dernan who can step up, who's been phenomenal over the last couple of years for Louth. So I think they should have enough, Louth, but I suppose we'll have to wait and see.
Definitely so, yeah. And just tying into the next question, obviously, Gavin, great minds think alike. No offence to Sligo or Clare over the last 3 years, but hopefully the finalist thing, getting Sam Maguire's status is removed in next year's structure, because it's mad. One of these two are missing out, as well as Offaly, to be fair. No doubt about it. Brian is saying here, if Louth are the majority of their injuries, if they're cleared up, I'd expect Louth to win. In terms of the Sam Maguire, question one, Aaron, who would be under more pressure to get the win against Sam Maguire Cup this weekend? And question two, do you think this finalist team needs to move on, in your opinion? Because you look at Clare, they only have to beat Tipperary to get to a Munster final, and then they're in the Sam Maguire Cup. Louth and Kildare, who are higher in the league pedestal than Clare at the moment, they have to fight against each other to get Sam Maguire Cup football. Do you think that needs to be gotten rid of?
Yeah, like I think firstly, like in terms of who's under more pressure, it's a weird one. Like, you would think it should be Kildare, given the history of the two counties and everything else, and given like Kildare as a county should be doing far better than what they are, and for it to be a second year that Kildare in the Tailteann Cup would be crazy, really, considering, it was only 2-3 years ago that they nearly beat Dublin. So it's kind of a hard one to kind of look towards in terms of who the pressure is probably more so on. It feels like there's more on Louth, just given that they beat Kildare last year, given that they've got to the last 2 Leinster finals, and you feel like whilst they do have, a couple of under 20 lads coming through, their core players probably maybe if they don't get to a Leinster final and go to a Tailteann Cup, will there be the same kind of buy-in as there has been over the last couple of years? It'd be hard to know. But yeah, I think the pressure might be more so on Louth than Kildare.
And then on the second question, the Clare and Sligo taking the provincial finals, do you think that needs to be scrapped?
It's a hard, like, I think they just need to do the draws better, to be honest with you. And I think the draws just need to be fixed. Like, I think, like, say, like in Connacht, let's say Leitrim, who are Division 4 side, let's say they do something incredible and get to a Connacht final next year. I think it would be a massive shame for that to happen, and then a side then not get rewarded, do you know what I mean, by getting to a provincial final, or imagine they won the provincial final then, do you know what I mean, but they're in Division 4, so we can't put them in, so I think they just need to get better with the draws, in my opinion. And whether that's by seeding the draws a little bit or something like that, I don't really know. But I think that's the thing they need to fix.
Would that involve in Munster putting Cork and Kerry at separate sides of the draw?
I think so. Like, I think if you have Division 1, Division 2 teams, I think the higher the ranking in the league, I think those teams should be kept apart in draws. And I think there should be a little bit more seeding in terms of the National Football League ranking. I think with Clare, I think we're having, the two highest ranked sides in Kerry and Cork from Munster on one side of the draw, and then Clare, Tipperary, and Waterford on the other. It just doesn't really make sense. And we saw that even a few years ago when Sligo ended up in there, when they had to be New York and London. So, it's just one of them things that seems to happen.
Definitely so. But you're predicting Louth to win this game anyway?
Yeah, I'll go Louth narrowly, say 2 points.
I'm going to go for Kildare. I have belief in this Kildare team, and as comment just came in from Nick Hilliard there, that Kildare, or it wasn't Nick Hilliard, Kevin Hilliard, sorry Kevin, for getting the name wrong there. It's apparently Keenan and Mulroy won't be in there for Louth, which is massive in my opinion. Craig Lennon's obviously massive for coming back in, but Kildare, the confidence they would have got against Westmeath winning that game, I think that'll be enough to push them over the line. Moving on to the next game, Dublin against Meath, obviously Portlaoise, just live on GA Plus as well at 4 p.m. on Sunday. I think the main question here, Aaron, I think we're all kind of predicting Dublin win this game, even though Meath are actually 7-1 on to win this, crazy enough. Do you think it's vital for the Leinster Championship that Meath put up a similar test what Cork did against Kerry last week?
I think so, yeah, because it feels like it's all the ducks are, in a row for Meath a little bit here in terms of like what I was alluding to earlier. You have Meath who've looked very good this year. They've had a brilliant year. I know they didn't get promoted, and they obviously had a bit of a kind of wobble and maybe some turmoil behind the scenes and everything else. But look, they bounced back versus Offaly, and you're only as good as your last game. They scored 120 in one half of football to turn that around versus a good Offaly team as well, in my opinion. So that will definitely stand to them. And then you have the new rules coming in, which I think Dublin haven't really used too much yet. We haven't really kind of clicked into gear in terms of 2-pointers. We're definitely missing some key players who would have been excellent off 2-pointers in the past. And then you have Portlaoise as well. With the fact it's outside Croke Park, it would have been in Croke Park. With these new rules, Meath might have maybe made a fist out of it, but I think we all would have expected Dublin still to be far too strong. Now, with it being in Portlaoise, there is a chance there for Meath. I don't think it's inconceivable that they come 1 or 2 points or even win the game. I definitely don't think it's impossible in my opinion. Dublin looks sluggish against Wicklow as well. At the same time, though, I would expect a bite back from Dublin. Like Desi was not happy at all following the win versus Wicklow. The team did look very jaded and just very sort of out of sorts. I would expect there to be a response. And usually against Meath, we actually do play very well. Like a lot of the time, we've had some poor performances against Louth, against Kildare, but more often than not, maybe than the one game a couple of years ago where I think Meath got within 3 or 4 points of us in Croke Park. I think maybe 21 or 22 that year was. But I think it's like more often than not, we have big performances against Meath, and I would expect us to still come through by 4 or 5. But definitely, I think it's, probably is important for the Leinster Football Championship to be, for it to be a competitive game.
Brian comments in here, Dublin have a lot of questions to answer. I'd expect a much better performance. It's vital for Meath to stop Dublin scoring easy goals. Is there a case of deja vu in a way? Because I remember in the COVID kind of year, the half kind of COVID year 2021, Dublin struggled massively in the quarterfinal away from home against Division 4 side of Wexford. They ended up winning that game, but Meath then tested them all the way, only losing by 3 or 4 points in that Leinster semi-final. Dublin struggled at periods against Wicklow away from home, a Division 4 side in Antrim. You then go into a Leinster semi-final. Is there a bit of repeated history there?
Yeah, like I think there could be. It has been a common occurrence under Desi Farrell where Dublin have been, they've had these sluggish performances a lot in Leinster over the last couple of years, and even look at 2023 as well, where we were, dreadful against Kildare in the Leinster semis, dreadful in the group stages at different times as well. But we won the All-Ireland that year, so it's, it's interesting. It does kind of feel like Dublin are, they're holding back their best. I feel like last year maybe they were kind of in full flow a little bit too early, and that kind of came back to haunt them. Whereas 23, we seem to kind of click into gear at exactly the right time. So feels like maybe we're going for that little premise. But look, that could maybe leave the door open a little bit for Meath. And they certainly have some big players in Owen Frayne and Jack Flynn. I don't think Jordan Morris will be available for this game, but they have some big kind of players there who can kick 2-pointers.
Definitely so. And just a long story short there, I think Dublin will win the game, but hopefully Meath will put up a test this weekend and take some inspiration from the likes of Cork, from Leitrim, from Antrim in the last few weeks in the provincial championships and give it a right good go. Hopefully Meath do that. Just on the side note here, Gavin's commenting here, I'm so sick of Roscommon playing Dublin in the groups. This would be the 5th time if they meet this year. But if Meath somehow won, Dublin and Roscommon would both be 3rd seeds. Hope for the Royals. I think Gavin's kind of taking out an anger issue there, is he, Aaron?
Yeah. No, look, I do agree with him, to be fair. Like, I think ourselves and the Rossies have been, like, it's for 2 teams outside of, from different provinces, and considering it's not like Roscommon have been getting to All Ireland semi-finals or finals or anything like that. Like, we seem to play Roscommon nearly as much as we play Mayo, and it does seem to be in groups, and always in Croke Park as well. Like, maybe if you had a shot at us in Hyde Park, maybe it might be a little bit different, but we always seem to get you in Croke Park as well, which you probably would want a bit more variation on it.
Exactly. So Brian O'Reilly comments in here, while there are a lot of All-Ireland winners retired, they still have some All-Ireland winners on the panel. I think he means Dublin there. So yeah, that's Dublin and Meath wrapped up. So that's wrapped up with the football. We'll move on a bit on to the LGFA and Camogue before we finish up. Starting off with the LGFA, the Munster LGFA Championship. This is a group format involving 4 teams, Cork, Kerry, Waterford and Tipperary. So the first day out, Cork play against Kerry on Saturday in Clodagh at 2 p.m. That's in Cork. In Cork County, that's obviously not in Cork City, obviously, and Tipperary against Waterford in Fethard Park in Tipperary on Sunday at 2 p.m. For context here for our listeners, Cork and Tipperary are both in Division 2 of the little LGFA league. Cork won 6 out of their 8 games, obviously losing twice to Galway. Some decent young players and all that, so you'd be confident enough that they can put up a decent enough test. But then again, Kerry, All-Ireland champions, LGFA champions in the league as well. I don't know, is Katie Cronin going to be part of the Kerry team? There's rumours she's going down to AFL. I think she won't be able to play in this one. Louise Verhurting's obviously retired from LGFA as well, which is a massive blow. They do have Sheer O'Shea and Daniel O'Leary, which is a massive coup for Kerry, but Cork will be hoping the likes of Katie Quirk, Rosie Corkery, and Shauna Kelly will be a massive form for Cork. They got all-stars in the league this season. As for Tipperary and Waterford, Tipperary finished 3rd in Division 2, so decent enough campaign for them with Ashton Maloney up top. Waterford were very impressive though. Other than Armagh and Kerry were the best ranked team in the LGFA league with the likes of Breed McMaw, Kellyanne Hogan and all them players. Would you expect Kerry and Waterford beating the 2 Division 1 teams winning this weekend, or do you think Cork or Tipperary being at home will cause a test here?
Yeah, I would. It's hard to know. Like, sometimes in these provincials, like I remember Cork beat Kerry a couple of years ago, in ladies football. Like, so it definitely can happen. It's not inconceivable. If there was a surprise, you probably more so see it in that game. But I think with Kerry's form coming in, having looked as good as they have in the league, they've carried on the momentum from winning the All Ireland. They're not missing the retirements in terms of Louise and Mahertig. So no, I think they'll be too strong there. And yeah, I'd fancy Waterford to come through Tip as well.
Yeah, I think Waterford and Kerry will win their games at the weekend. It'll be interesting to see if Waterford actually reach a Munster final. I know, obviously, a Cork man at the moment, Cork man forever. But I do think it'd be massive for ladies football if Waterford reach the LGFA Munster final, and they will garner more interest in LGFA in Waterford more than ever as well. The Connacht LGFA Championship this year is quite interesting because there's 3 teams for the first time in a long time. It used to be always Mayo and Galway, but now you have Leitrim joining in the fray this year, amazingly. This game is on in Swinford between Mayo and Leitrim. This is on Sunday at 1 p.m. Leitrim didn't get out of Division 4, unfortunately for them in the LGFA. Mayo, yes, they got relegated from Division 1 or Division 2 next season. They've lost a lot of players. The likes of Shauna Howley have left the panel. Lisa Cafferty has left the panel as well. Grace Kelly, Dave Kelly, they've long gone for the Mayo panel as well. Only Sinead Walsh and Saoirse Lally are probably the only experienced players in this Mayo team. It's a very tough job for Liam McHale. But at the same time, as amazing as that intermediate win was for Leitrim last year, you would expect Mayo to win this. And how can Leitrim put up a test to Mayo this weekend?
Yeah, like it's been an incredible kind of rise for Leitrim over the last couple of years, and obviously, you saw a lot of teams kind of come up from intermediate, and cause a surprise and cause a big shock and everything else. It's like, a part of me wouldn't be surprised if Leitrim did pull something out of it. I think they definitely have the potential to do it. But as you said, I think Mayo overall should be too strong and should have enough, even with the relegation and everything else, and maybe some of the kind of exiles and players leaving. Like, I think they should be far too strong there. But I think it'll be great to see it. And look, as you said, it's great to kind of have Leitrim in there. And it's great to have them in the senior kind of championship, and it would be great to see them get over and kind of make a shock and a surprise. But I think overall, I think Mayo should have enough.
Just before we get on to more games, Brian's coming here. Matthew, apologies. I missed the hurling sector. Don't think you should be too disappointed about last week. I think Shane Barrett had a major impact. Yeah, I think so as well, Brian. But if you think you missed the segment, obviously you could go back. You could go back and live stream, so I don't think many people actually know that. So you could actually go back to the start and see the hurling segment in that. But moving on to the last LGFA senior game at the weekend, these Kildare against Dublin in St. Conleth's Park in Newbridge on Sunday at 2 p.m. Dublin beat Meath last weekend with Hannah Tyrrell to the fore, the likes of Chloe Darby there as well. Kildare beat Dublin in the league though. So is there an opportunity here for Kildare to go on and win this game? I know they're without Grace Clifford this year due to family concerns and things like that this year, but they still have the likes of Roisin Byrne in the team. I think Ruth Sargent is a brilliant player. Leisha Lennon at full back as well. So Kildare definitely have a chance. And with Dublin, a lot of players exiling their new management team in Dublin at home, do you give Kildare a chance here?
Yeah. Like, I think it's weird. Like, like, it's mad to think that I feel like Kildare are nearly more of a threat than Meath, which, is kind of mad how quickly those tables have turned very quickly. But it just feels like Meath, over the last couple of years with changes in management and everything else, just have definitely kind of tailed off a bit. It was a big shock in the league, as you said, with Kildare getting the win. So it's absolutely something Dublin will have to be wary of. But I would still expect we'll have enough. I still think we've far enough players with Hannah Tyrrell and some other kind of big players in there. So I think we will be too strong for Kildare, but it will be interesting if Kildare can pull off the win and pull off a surprise or even put in a big performance. Then all of a sudden you'd be thinking, like, how far can Kildare go in the ladies' championship? And look, I think it's great in ladies football to see, Meath coming up. You've had the rise of Armagh. You've got Leitrim kind of coming up from intermediate. I think it's brilliant to see because it's something we're kind of missing probably a lot in the men's kind of game, is new teams kind of coming along and making a step up. So, I think it's great to see Kildare in the mix now. And it'll be very interesting to see how they do this weekend.
Definitely. So I think Kildare could actually beat Dublin, but we'll see this weekend in terms of the shot there. Gavin's commenting in terms of the LGFA. Would Leitrim Senior do the Roscommon ladies play someone in Connacht in intermediate? I wonder. I think, Gavin, I might be wrong in saying this, but they could play against the likes of Sligo. I think Sligo are, a junior team at the moment. Roscommon are definitely intermediate. So I honestly don't know for sure, but I think it's an intermediate championship with Roscommon and Sligo in it. So that's who Roscommon play in the Connacht Championship. Then they move on to the intermediate All-Ireland series. Moving on to the Camogie, the Munster Camogie semi-final between Tipperary and Waterford in the Rag in Thurles on Sunday at 1 p.m. The winners of this play Cork in the Camogie final. Obviously a daunting task. Cork haven't conceded a goal in the Camogie this year, which is absolutely amazing. But Tipperary battered really Limerick last weekend in the quarterfinal. This would be a tougher game against Waterford. Waterford did beat them in the league. Waterford had the likes of Dave Rocket, Beck Harton, and all them players. Obviously Tipperary, Grace O'Brien in that team. Cotavan isn't there this year. I don't know what's the issue there. I don't know if she's going to play at all this season. Cara Kennedy is playing in this team. But just in terms of another kind of controversy, the Tipperary and Waterford teams are both playing each other in the LGFA on the same day in Fetters in Tipperary. The Camogie teams between Tipperary and Waterford are playing in the Rag in Tipperary on Sunday. Why isn't this a double header round? Just before we get into discussing the game.
I don't know. Like, it's like, hopefully when all the associations merge and everything else, like, properly, like, this will kind of hopefully fix these issues and problems. But I don't know why someone can't just have a bit of common sense and be like, let's have this as a double header and kind of have a more packed out stadium. And I don't know if there's other reasons for it or whatever it might be. I don't know the logistics of it, but yeah, like, it would have been it would have been a no-brainer. But yeah, in terms of the game, look, it's going to be a very interesting game. As you were kind of alluded to before, like it feels like Tipperary, the one team. Cork are definitely going to be runaway winners. I think runaway favourites. I think in Camogie this year. And the question is, like, do you have you have Galway there, but Tipperary seem like a dark horse. Waterford have kind of been in the mix a little bit as well. So it's going to be an interesting game, but I probably would back Tip, I think, to come through.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Tip slightly, but they have a bad record against Waterford. But the rag, it should be enough in terms of home advantage again in Tipperary over the line. And their win over Limerick was quite comprehensive last week. Just to finish off the show, there's 2 Ulster Camogie semi-finals as well. Antrim against Down on Sunday at 1 p.m. Down resides their place in Division 1B this year. Antrim won the Division 1B title, winning every single one of their games, which is an amazing achievement. The likes of Roisin McCormack, Meath, Kelly are the standout performers for Antrim, and they'll probably be favourites this weekend, despite the likes of Down having Paul O'Hagan among their ranks. Armagh Derry is the other Ulster Camogie semi-final. That's on Sunday at 1 p.m. Derry lost the Division 2A final to Offaly in recent weeks in Semple Stadium as well. And they've lost a lot of players in their panel, but you'd expect Derry to win this, considering Armagh are a Premier Junior side, Derry are a senior side this year. You would expect Derry and Antrim to reach the Ulster final, but Ulster Camogie, hopefully that will get the recognition it deserves this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Derry and Antrim, they probably are 2 more experienced teams, senior teams, and everything else. So I think they should be far too strong. But yeah, as you said, it's great to kind of have the Ulster games there, and yeah, hopefully they're cracking games and we get to view them. But yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think Antrim and Derry should be too strong there.
Yeah, I think so as well. Antrim and Derry to reach the Ulster Camogie final. Just before we end the show, Brian has another comment in here. What I'd expect Tip to improve in the league for the league final and take belief from last week, still take Cork to win. And both myself and Aaron agree that Cork will get over the line. So that is where we'll wrap things up in terms of the podcast this week. If you like the video, subscribe, ring the bell for any notifications as well that come on this channel as well. Obviously, subscribe to the Spotify version of this podcast as well. Thanks to Aaron for coming on to the podcast tonight. Thanks for Capture Legs for sponsoring tonight's show once again this evening. And until next week, we'll see you then. Take care and enjoy the games of the weekend.